Welcome to Just a Mama and Her Bible podcast. My name is Clarice. I'm a Jesus-loving mom to 4 kids who's on a mission to find her purpose and grow in faith with you guys. Today, we are in chapter 2 of the story of Job. So, chapter 2 is about Job's second affliction. We already know that he's lost all his riches. He's lost his children. So, let's see what's next. Again, there was a day when the sons of God came to present themselves before the Lord, and Satan came also among them to present himself before the Lord. So again, Satan has to go to God and present himself. You see who has the power here. And the Lord said unto Satan, From whence comest thou? And Satan answered the Lord and said, From going to and fro in the earth, and from walking up and down into it. Satan is like, I'm just roaming the earth looking for trouble, basically. And the Lord said unto Satan, Hast thou considered my servant Job, that there is none like him in the earth, a perfect and an upright man, one that feareth God, and eschewed evil? And still he holdeth fast his integrity, although thou movest me against him, to destroy him without cause. Although thou movest me against him, to destroy him without cause. This verse suggests that Job's suffering was not due to any sin or wrongdoing on his part. God is emphasizing Job's righteousness even in the face of unjust suffering. So this verse really highlights Job's perseverance, God's acknowledgement of Job's character, the nature of Job's suffering, and it's not a punishment but part of a divine test. And Satan answered the Lord and said, Skin for skin, yea, all that a man hath will he give for his life. Skin for skin. So that saying is debatable, but it's basically saying Job has only suffered external losses, but if his body were afflicted, he would turn against God. So Satan is implying that if Job were physically afflicted, he would abandon his faith. But put forth thine hand now, and touch his bone and his flesh, and he will curse thee to thy face. So Satan is asking God to allow him to afflict Job's body, suggesting that physical suffering would break Job's faith. And the Lord said unto Satan, Behold, he is in thine hand, but save his life. So now God is giving Satan permission to, do what he wants to Job, to touch him, to touch Job physically, right? So God allows Satan to afflict Job physically, but with one restriction: he cannot take Job's life. He's like, you do what you want to him, but do not take his life. So that right there is showing you that, God is only letting Satan do so much before he's like, okay, you can't do all that. All right. So, hold fast to your faith, guys. Hold fast to your faith. So Job will suffer greatly, but will not die from his affliction. So went Satan forth from the presence of the Lord to smote Job with sores, boils from the sole of his foot unto his crown. So this verse describes how Satan, having received permission from God, immediately afflicts Job with a terrible physical condition. He didn't waste no time. He immediately affected Job, right? So he's afflicted with painful sores oozing all over his body. So he's lost his wealth, his children, and now his body is in agony. And he took him a potsherd to scrape himself withal, and he sat down among the ashes. This verse describes Job's response to his intense physical suffering. A potsherd is a broken piece of pottery. He used it to relieve the itching and drain the pus. So he has no medical relief and resorts to anything he could find. Can you imagine? There's nothing they can do for you medically. So you're just like you scraping the wounds with anything you could find. So that gives us a taste of what he was going through. He sat down in ashes. So sitting down in ashes was a traditional sign of mourning. So now Job, he's just in utter sorrow and in humiliation. He's lost everything, and he's broke, and he's probably homeless, and he's out there with sores all over his body. So he's humiliated, and he's just in utter sorrow. So this verse paints a vivid picture of Job's misery. Then said his wife unto him, Dost thou still retain thine integrity? Curse God and die? So now his wife, so we know his wife is still with him. So now his wife is challenging him with a harsh statement. She's questioning Job about why he's still holding on to his faith despite everything he has lost. Some say it's her telling Job to give up on God. Others see it as an expression of deep sorrow. She may not want to see him suffer any longer. So what do you think? Do you think it's, her telling Job to give up on God, or she just wants to see him out of agony? So I think that Job's wife is just a grieving wife who has lost her faith, and I think she thinks Job should lose his faith with her. Also, we have to remember that Satan uses people to get to us. So Satan could be using his wife to try to get him to lose his faith. But he said unto her, Thou speakest as one of the foolish women speaketh. What? Shall we receive good at the hand of God? And shall we not receive evil? In all this, did not Job sin with his lips? This is Job responding to his wife. Notice, he doesn't directly call her foolish. Instead, he says she's speaking like someone who lacks wisdom and understanding. So Job acknowledges that God is sovereign over both blessings and suffering. Faith should not be dependent only on receiving blessings. We should have faith through the suffering and through the blessings. So unlike his wife, Job does not lash out on God. Job maintains his faith even when circumstances seem unbearable. Now when Job's 3 friends heard of all this evil that was come upon him, they came every one from his own place. Eliphaz, excuse me guys if I get the wording wrong, because I'm gonna try to sound these words out. Eliphaz the Temanite, and Bildad the Shuhite, and Zophar the Namathites, for they had made an appointment together to come to mourn with him and to comfort him. This verse is introducing Job's 3 friends who come to visit him after they hear about what Job is going through. And when they lifted up their eyes afar off and knew him not, they lifted up their voice and wept. And they rent every one his mantle and sprinkled dust upon their heads toward heaven. So this verse is describing the reaction of Job's 3 friends. Job's condition was so severe that his friends did not recognize him. It's so crazy. So they break down crying after they see him. Tearing one's robe was a traditional sign of grief and distress in ancient times. So that's how Job must have really, been afflicted. And if they could not recognize him, he was disfigured. When you think about it, it's just so crazy. It's like what Job could have been going through at this moment. So they sat down with him upon the ground 7 days and 7 nights, and none spake a word unto him, for they saw that his grief was very great. Sometimes silence speaks louder than words. So they sat there in silence for 7 days and 7 nights. Can you just imagine just grieving with him? 7 days and 7 nights with him, not saying a word. It really starts to put a perspective on what Job was really going through. Because for them to not say a word to him and just, sit there and know that they didn't even have to say anything. They just knew that, he was going through a lot. So they were just there with him. So this chapter highlights Job's unwavering faith despite extreme suffering. It reinforces the idea that suffering is not always the result of wrongdoing. So sometimes our suffering is a divine test. We never know. So that was the end of chapter 2. So thanks for listening to Just a Mom and Her Bible podcast. Subscribe and be on the lookout for chapter 3 of the story of Job. See you guys later.